In this valve seat, there's a nick, and that's causing the valve to leak whenever we do the water test. So if it's going to leak water, there's a good chance it'll leak air. So we need to get that out of there, and in this case, the valve is super compact, so you can't, say, make a jig with blades or some kind of grinder that'll fit in there, because anything that's even a little bit larger than the diameter of this valve won't fit in there. So what we're going to do is take the valve and glue sandpaper in 3 different points, and then spin it. So using that method, it will take off more material than just your valve grinding compound, but it also will keep the angle of the valve the same. They do make valve grinders, but you have to be pretty specialized and really be almost the exact size for this valve for it to actually work. Since this scratch is pretty deep, I'm going to use 150, and I'll cut off little strips here. And we'll cut off a few small pieces that'll fit the contour. Now I'm just going to add just a drop of super glue onto the back of the sandpaper, and then we'll place that on the valve. Now we've got one piece on, and let's go ahead and add another one. And also the 3rd piece. Now that I've got these in place, I'm just going to use a little bit of activator just to make sure everything is cured. Now with these glued in place, I'm going to put it in, and we'll grind that seat. Normally I'd be lapping all these valves by hand, but normally there's not a big gouge in the seat. So this needs a little bit more speed, more power, and it would take a really long time by hand. Not to mention, after doing a lot of lapping, your palms really get sore from spinning on that piece of wood. So this is a nice break. Look at just how shiny it made that valve seat. That's very impressive. But also you can still see that gap right there, and I mean that nick. And I'm expecting this to go slow. This is a pretty hard material they use as valve seats. I'm guessing it's just hardened steel, but I mean it's gonna be tricky to sand with sandpaper, but it's gonna probably be a bit faster than grinding it by hand with that grit. And this seems to be working really nicely actually. Sandpaper does seem to be wearing down a little bit, so we might have to periodically change it out. It's still good right now, but there's definitely results. It is making improvement. It's just about halfway nicked down now. It used to be a little bit farther than that, so progress is going, but it is going pretty slow. I can still feel that there's grit on the sandpaper, so we'll keep going. But we'll put a little bit of water in there so it'll clear the chips and the dust that come from there. It'll keep your sandpaper grinding a little bit more effectively. This is the second valve seat right beside the one we were just grinding. I don't see any dings on it other than there's a little nick right there, but it doesn't go deep into the valve. It just is on the very top. I'm going to use this valve, which seems to really flatten it nicely, and that'll really show us if there is any dings. I don't see any nicks around the ring here. I'm assuming it's just a problem with the valve itself not seating up quite right, so it just needs a little bit more lapping with the lapping compound, but this valve looks fine, where you can see on this one, we got a nick right there. In order to remove the super glue, we use nail polish remover, which is 100% acetone, and that just gums it up. It's really easy to pick off, and then I just re-lapped the valve. The nick is not completely out, but it's greatly reduced. The water in here, I just put in here probably about an hour and a half ago. It is holding really well. There's not even any water showing underneath. I don't see any drips there, and even on the valves themselves, it's completely dry. So this is a really good sign. I'm gonna let this sit for a while longer just to make sure, but it's looking good. I'm glad we were able to fix that nick without needing expensive tools. We were able to just use a bit of sandpaper. It didn't completely get rid of the nick, but it now seals, it passes the water test, and it'll hold compression. So I hope you guys found this video useful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.